So first coffee in 30 days. Smells really good. So, I'm quitting coffee for 30 days. Yeah. So coffee is probably the second most traded commodity in the world after oil, if I'm not mistaken, and it's helped millions of people start their day. And it's ingrained in so many cultures around the world that coffee has just been a growing industry. And for me, it's something I enjoy a lot. I enjoy the process of making coffee, the feeling of that, the smell, the aromas, the sounds of making the coffee. And it really does fuel my day when it comes to work and getting things done throughout the day. So why would I quit it for 30 days? So although I don't think caffeine is inherently bad, but you'll see from a few of the experts that I'm going to put on here that always good to experiment with things that you put into your system to see how your body reacts. And cutting it out for 30 days is just going to give me the ability to see what impact it has on my life.
But caffeine is a misunderstood drug. Certainly, it is a drug. It's what we call a psychoactive stimulant. Everyone knows that caffeine can help alert you and sort of keep you awake. That's the thing that's most known. The other thing about caffeine, however, that most people don't realize is the time that it is in your system. So most drugs have what we call a half-life, the amount of time it takes for half of that drug to be essentially excreted out your system. Caffeine has a half-life of about 6 or 7 hours, and it's a little dependent on what type of gene that you have to sort of metabolize the caffeine, but on average, it's about that. But what's interesting is that caffeine has a quarter life of about 12 hours. What this means is that if you have a cup of coffee at noon, a quarter of that caffeine is still circulating around your brain at midnight. Wow. So to put that in context, it would be the equivalent of getting into bed, and just before you turn the light out, you swig a quarter of a cup of Starbucks and you hope for a good night of sleep. You would never do that because, but that's exactly, unfortunately, what people do, completely innocently by drinking caffeine, still too late in the afternoon. Some people say, look, I'm one of those people who can drink a cup of coffee in the evening, have an espresso after dinner, and I fall asleep fine and I stay asleep. Now, even if that's true, there was an alarming study that was done where they gave people just one single cup of coffee, a dose of 200 milligrams of caffeine, standard cup of coffee. And then they measured the quality of their deep sleep by tracking these big, powerful brain waves. And what they found was that just one dose of caffeine in the evening decreased the amount of deep sleep by 20%. Now, you would have to normally age by about 15 years to produce that type of a deficit in your deep sleep, or you can do it every single night by having a cup of coffee.
Well, so that's interesting. Matthew Walker, who's an expert on sleep, is talking about the half-life of coffee. So it stays in your system 7 or 8 hours, and the quarter life, which stays for about 12 hours. So if you have coffee at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, by 7 or 8, half of that amount of caffeine is still in your system. And like he said, trying to go back to sleep or going to sleep when you have that amount of caffeine. The other part, which was interesting, which I found, is that people that say they can drink coffee and go to sleep, it might be true that they can fall asleep, but the quality of their sleep has become very different. And the scariest thing that he's saying is that sleep deprivation that's happening is the fastest way to age people. And when you're deprived of sleep, even if you don't realize it, you start to age a lot faster. Fascinating stuff.
Which is one of the reasons I included caffeine, a totally legal drug that everybody uses. What does that have to teach us? And in a way, one of the most powerful drug experiences I've had in my life was the first cup of coffee after 3 months off.
Really?
It was psychedelic. It
Really?
was incredible. Yeah.
Come on.
Try it. Try getting off caffeine for a
3
while.
months?
3 months without caffeine.
How am I going to do a podcast?
You may have to take a
I'm
hiatus.
going to run out of things to talk about. I'll fall asleep.
It was really hard. The first week I was not functional at all. I felt like I had contracted ADD. I could not stay on track. Everything, the periphery just kept intruding on my thinking. I couldn't write. I mean, writing is the most linear thing you can do, right?
Right.
And it's all about concentration, obviously. And I couldn't concentrate. And I felt like there was this veil between me and reality that, I was not quite seeing, getting, feeling. And it was weird. I didn't feel myself for the whole time. And I thought, what does that mean? It means yourself is caffeinated.
What is interesting when it comes to that, he's comparing it to other drugs and saying it was the most interesting high that he got from that. And so both of these people are talking about coffee as a drug and how productive societies became when coffee was introduced into them. So I think one of the biggest lessons that I've had this year when I've gone into more habit forming techniques is when we're looking at making habits, we have to, or positive habits, we have to make sure that there's no barriers to doing those habits. So if you're wanting to work out, you should have your clothes ready the night before, for example, so you're not wasting time or have an excuse not to do something, make it convenient to be able to get to the gym. And then when we look at bad habits like junk food or eating sweets and stuff like that, you want to put as many barriers as you can between you and that habit that you have. So when it came to coffee, I think removing a lot of the coffee elements out of my view and the temptation was an important thing. So when I started this, the first day of doing this was kind of weird because you have a habit in the morning or you have a routine in the morning where you make your coffee and you do that type of routine where you're sitting down and having your coffee. Now, when you remove that from your routine, you have to change things up. So that was the biggest change. I didn't experience much with regards to withdrawal for the first day or so. The second day, I started to feel a bit of a headache. I could feel my focus maybe wasn't there 100%. I felt a little bit low energy. Generally speaking, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. And that was something that was surprising to me, that it wasn't as aggressive as a lot of people describe the debilitating headaches and lack of focus that they go through. The problem is, as the days went on, so the day third was maybe the hardest day as I was going through this, it was the feeling of not being able to fully focus or have a laser focus when it came to doing creative stuff. And it felt like there was a barrier between me and what I was trying to do. And that was the hardest part for me, because being productive is maybe doing work and having a cup of coffee as you're doing that. And that element of it kind of was missing from my life. The thing is with coffee and how we see things is that although it's addictive and although many experts describe it as a drug, I love coffee because of the experience that you go through. And I think everybody has their own experience and thoughts about what coffee is, whether they like the taste, whether they like the process, whether they like the social element of it. And you can see this when you go to any cafe, that the underlying element of most people going to that is having the coffee or caffeine or some type of caffeinated drink as well. So what I started to do instead is that I started to drink more herbal teas and things that were maybe different tasting than what coffee is, to fill in that gap. Although it did, to a certain extent, fill that, it wasn't really what I needed at that point. And there was a lot of times where I had deadlines or I had things that I needed to finish fast, and the coffee would have been a fantastic addition to what I was trying to do. And that wasn't there for the last 30 days. Now, when I look at what happened for the 30 days and did I notice anything remarkable, I have to say that the sleep was very different. After the first week or so of going without caffeine, I felt that my sleep was a lot more on point, and I would sleep a lot faster. I would wake up on my own without the alarm, and a lot of maybe anxiety or stress that you might have felt with coffee wasn't there anymore, or was less. But did I feel it was the end of the world, not having coffee? Not at all. Was it a huge struggle for the month? It wasn't a big deal. So first coffee in 30 days. Smells really good.